So hello, my name's Rob and this is Cattle Rabbit Scale Model Studios, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at a little bit of a what if situation. Little Diddy dead Balthasar here. I'm going to Primarisify him and add him to my army. I ended up with something like this. Really happy how this guy turned out. Lots of little hints and tips. If you're ever worried about clipping away shoulder pads or pinning stuff, stick around, there's going to be a lot in this video for you. But I'm going to show you what bits I used and how I did it. So let's just get started. So before we begin, yes, I am aware Balthasar is dead and he's not coming back, but I had this model on my shelf for ages and I didn't want to do anything with it because one, it's so Diddy next to a Primaris, and also I kind of felt like it was a little slice of, I guess, history. Like I didn't want to do anything with this model because you can't get this model anymore. This was sent to me by my buddy Josh. He got a load of cool Dark Angels Firstborn bits from Dark Vengeance, I believe, and he sent them all down to me and it's just sat there. Obviously, if you know me, you know I don't like having stuff just floating around. So I wanted to do something with it. First port of call for stuff like this, artwork. Now there aren't many bits of artwork that I could find on Balthasar, but he's got this lovely ornate red cape, his amazing sword, Felbane, I believe it's called, Felbane, I keep calling it, sorry, it's just my bad pronunciation. So what I wanted to do is try and use certain aspects of this model. I was hell-bent on using the sword blade, his helmet. I also wanted to try and save his backpack if I could. There was also little flourishes like his little angel wing on his shoulder, which I really wanted to kind of just dive into and keep because I thought it made the model really cool looking. Now I will say this, if you are against gratuitous violence towards miniatures, please look away now because I am going to have to butcher this little figure. The first step was to remove the sword blade from the hilt really carefully. So just obviously don't do what I do, don't wiggle blades and cut towards you like I'm doing now, that's awful. But it was the only way I could comfortably get it. Then I had to cut a massive chunk out of him to kind of get to the head. I didn't want to damage the helmet, I really wanted to use it. In fact, that's out of everything the bit I wanted to use the most, as these helmets are quite few and far between in Dark Angels kits. Once everything was removed, I managed to get the head completely undamaged, which I was super chuffed about. I actually got his backpack, which I decided to keep. I thought it was a cool little nod for him using his own equipment if he did cross the Rubicon Primaris. There were some little bits that I managed to keep, little dangly Dark Angels things, which I didn't end up using, but obviously his very impressive sword, Felbane, as well, which is just really cool looking. I kind of wish that Balthasar had stuck around, and the more I learn about him, the more I really like him. For a body, I'm going to be using the Judiciar body. I really like this, and I think him having like draped red robes, much like the artwork we saw over the dark green armor, I think he's going to look really cool. So, you know, I know he's not a chaplain and these guys are in charge of looking after him, make sure to step out of line and stuff like that, but this model is too good to pass up, and I've wanted to use it for ages. The helmet fits in absolutely perfectly. Super chuffed. The backpack, again, not really much cleanup required, and obviously his little dangly bits, same again. I did try and find somewhere to put them. I always like to try and use as many bits as I can, or at least try and keep them. It just didn't work out for me and I just didn't end up using it. The first step was to clean up the bits that I managed to save. Things like the backpack I just took off with my hobby knife as much as I could, and then I just filed it flat to make sure it had a really nice flat surface to adhere to on where the backpack obviously goes. Primaris have lovely sculpted backpack bits, really easy to do. As you can see, it pops on really nice and easily, definitely keeping that. His helmet, I did just chop off the little peg thing that was around it and kind of shape the ball joint. All Primaris kind of have that weird ball joint at the bottom of their head so you can pose their heads. This is no different now. I did also clean up the hilt of the sword as well, just so it was easier to work with when I did come to kind of pin it and stuff like that a little bit later. Obviously being careful to clean up the blade as well. Now, bits are always the lifeblood of kit bashes. I've got a lot of bits. I've done videos on kit bashes. Top right corner, you'll see my top 5 bits come up now. People seem to be enjoying that. It's great. I remembered that I had the blade guard sitting in my Lions box under my desk, only purely because I'd knocked something over and I found them and I really wanted to use it. And obviously having the sword arms in here, lots of good choices for a good pose for this guy. So I actually did try and kind of use a little bit of the sword arm bits and other variants I weren't going to use when I probably do blade guard maybe in the future. Now I'll probably kitbash them later, don't worry. But that was what I kind of ended up using. There were a few design choices again, like I wanted to keep. He had a tilt plate, but I didn't know whether I was going to use those, so I did unclip a couple of them. I always think just having the stuff out in front of me really helps. I really liked this sword arm. I like the way he's kind of got it kind of half raised, almost like he's marching towards it, and I felt it really suited the pose that I was going for and what I was, work with. Obviously I am going to be changing the blade on this arm as well. I also need to clip away the shoulder pad. I opted for unsculpted shoulder pads because when I put the angel wing things on from the company veteran box, normally I glue these to helmet to make the kind of angelic helmets type things. I didn't want any sculpted detail to get in the way, so I did opt for plain ones. I'll just put transfers on. It's not the end of the world, although it would have been nice to use sculpted, but hey ho. And then I found this other cool arm. It's kind of, I think he's holding a purity seal. It just looks like he's got like a bit of cloth in his hand. So what I will do is I'll put a purity seal stamp on it, almost like he's gonna give it to one of his battle brothers. Maybe he's come back to inspire them or something like that. I don't know, make your own narrative about it. But I just thought it was a bit of fun. So the first thing is to clip away the shoulder pad. Now, this is easier than what it sounds. Obviously, a lot of the time you're trying to remove the surface area to get something in smaller, but a lot of the time I find, especially if you're not confident with this type of stuff, clip away the edges first and you'll find that in actual fact straight away your shoulder pad will, about 7 or 8, 9 times out of 10, it will go on. You don't need to cut away much else. If you do, use a hobby knife and just trim down the middle of it, but that's it. All you do is cut away your edges first, so it's thinner. You're making the arm thinner, the shoulder pad thinner, and then you're putting your replacement shoulder pad over it. Honestly, a lot easier than what it is. As you can see, that's what I've done here. Not much work at all. I did just trim it round with a knife just to finish it off. Same again, I don't need any work on the other arm because that doesn't have a shoulder pad. Job done. That's the first step already. We're breezing. However, now it's time to remove the blade and pin on the new one. Now I've covered this a lot on my channel, so I am going to breeze through this section quickly, but I just think that when I was actually recording this, it just means that I've done this so many times. I've actually refined how easy it is, this method to do. Obviously, the first thing you are going to need to do is make sure you get a nice clean cut on your blade from the hilt, because I'm working from the hilt. With a hobby knife, a little bit of pressure, little wiggles, and eventually that will pop off. Obviously, a lot of swords, you might not realise, they're sculpted to part of the wrist guard or forearm guard, I guess. Just pop that off using your knife. Just be careful. Obviously, I'm a little bit reckless with my knife, but I can't feel much in my fingers anyway, so it doesn't matter. But still, please be safe when you're doing stuff like this, and just smooth it over. Then I get a file. And all I do is I back and forth really, really gently. I'm letting the file do the work, make sure I've got a flat surface to work with. Then I get my hobby knife and make sure it is a sharp hobby knife with a nice point to it. And all I do is I use the seam lines on the actual model just to give me a guiding point where the middle of the handle would be. And all I do is I twist it back and forth. I also repeat this on the hilt of the sword, same again, just to make a little pilot hole. Then using a 1mm drill bit on my little pin drill, I just let the drill do all the work, back and forth, keep checking it, make sure you're nice and straight, and that's it. 2 lovely sized holes. Again, the jokes just write themselves. And then I come in with a little bit of a paper clip and some super glue. Here I'm using some super glue gel, and all I do is I jab the paper clip in the super glue like so. Make sure there is a good amount on it, and the only time you'll really need to do too much work, as I find with pinning, is pop it into the handle And then what we need to do is just make sure that our paperclip is straight and it's going straight up. As you can see, look at that, I've done this a few times, haven't I? And then all we're going to do is, using a pair of clippers, nip them off. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pop our second part into it. As you can see, that I've left the paperclip a little bit too long. Remember, you can always take off, but you can't put back on. So I always recommend leaving it longer. And then it's just a question of getting some super glue once it's short enough and fits nice and snug. Keep checking it. And then what I like to do is I like to come in with some super glue extra thin, and I put it on the base of the hilt. So not only have we got super glue on the actual pin part, we've also got super glue thin on the actual plastic part. So you're going to get a really, really strong bond. This is going to be, you know, this is not going to break at all. Don't worry about it if you're doing it this way. And then it's just a question of making sure that your sword isn't wonky or floppy or anything like that, in case you've drilled your hole a bit too big. What I find is keep checking it. You do get a bit of play, as the super glue and the plastic glue will take a little while to just set. You've got a couple of minutes, so don't panic too much. What I do find is where, especially on Space Marines, these little wrist guards, forearm guards they have, I always make sure the blade's sitting nice and straight with them, and no issues so far. Now, he's got a bit of a hole on this side, and I thought this was a good little tip. If you haven't got any green stuff, or maybe you're not confident with green stuff or anything like that, get some blue tack and make like this little plug type kind of shape, and just push it into your hole. Not like that, but hey, I'm shaming no one. Just keep pushing it in. What we want to do is make sure that it's really packed out and that it's kind of not going to go anywhere. Just keep pushing it in, make sure it's really, really in there. Then all I'm going to do is, with a sharp hobby knife, just cut away the excess, so you've got a nice flat finish. Now you can spend a bit of time just kind of pushing this out with your knife, but if you get some liquid super glue like I've got here and paint this over it, it actually becomes rock hard. So again, the jokes just write themselves. I'm going to stop that now. This one's got a little brush applicator, and all I do is I paint it over the super glue blue tack, sorry, do beg your pardon, paint it over the blue tack and give that about 20 minutes to set. The blue tack becomes rock hard, you can file that and everything, and it just becomes a really, really good way of plugging holes. So again, these jokes are just thick and fast on this one. Put a good load on, make sure it's liquid super glue, job done. Now, when it comes to the shoulder pads and his angelic, I can't speak now, oh my god, what's happened? Yeah, his angelic shoulder pads, the only thing I had to watch for here is making sure that one wasn't higher than the other. Using a little bit of super glue thin, I do get a bit of play with these and a bit of time to adjust them, but what I did was I pushed it, and you're going to have to bear with me and my fat little fingers, just push them into the corner, making sure that the edge of the angel wing type thing, I don't even know what this is called, oh god, I'm so awful, is in line, and then do the other one. And I just kind of touched them ever so slightly to make sure they were in line and knock them, you know, back into where I was happy with them. At first I was going to do a tilt plate on one side, but I like my Space Marines with a sprinkling of ridiculousness, and I think this is really ridiculousness. I absolutely love it. If I had some wings for like Yndrasta or some Sanguini Guard wings, I would have given him wings and all, because I think it looks so cool. So the tilt plate, unfortunately, is out in this instance. Angel Wings is in 100%. I did find this little book type thing. Again, always nice to have something read when you're on the go, so I'll probably just stick that down, but I'll do that later during the painting stage. And then there's not really much more to do with this guy. Obviously, I need to cut off this little end of Purity Seal just here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to literally file it down a little bit, cut the Purity Seal bit off and stick it on this little bit of ribbon he's holding to make it look like he's holding something. But I'm really chuffed with how he turned out. So here he is, Balthasar, across the Rubicon Primaris, almost like a angel who has risen again. It's ridiculous. I love the shoulder pads. I don't know, there's something just really 80s about it. I'm really happy with how this turned out. This has been a really, really fun one. For ages, I was looking at bits and I was really indecisive about using this model, again, because of the age of it. And I didn't want to feel like I was cutting up a piece of Warhammer history, and then I didn't know what to do, like pose-wise and stuff like that. So I'm glad I just got it done. I can't wait to paint him up. I wanted to paint him up, and I was going to do a big bumper video, but my Caliban green has actually dried out. I left the lid off during the warmer weeks and I haven't had a chance to pick up some. So we'll take a look at him now, but I'm going to leave you with the money shots. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'll see you all next time. God bless and take care.